Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's review is going to be on the latest studio album by Fiona Apple titled Fetch the Bolt Cutters. I'm starting to sound like a broken record because apparently I live under a musical rock. However, I was largely unfamiliar with Fiona Apple outside of maybe a few songs. I'm not even really sure of that. I did see this album pop up on Album of the Year, thought that it had a really interesting title, and thought that it looked really interesting. However, I didn't really get around to trying it out because of a lot of the new albums that were coming out, and unfortunately I didn't really give this thing a listen until people were giving it huge amounts of praise. That's when I knew I had to hop onto this. And honestly, I can really see where all of the praise is coming from, as this is one of the most enchanting listens I've had the pleasure of hearing for quite a while. Complicated simplicity is really the ethos of this record. Most tracks are driven by simple percussion and piano, although sometimes complicatedly playing, albeit, backing Fiona's vocals to create a somewhat simple aesthetic. However, the way each one of these instrumentals build up on top of some very oddball, unique sounds that are thrown in, sometimes very traditionally non-musical sounds, such as the dog barking on the end of the title track, add a very unique and somewhat experimental atmosphere, although simplicity is sometimes the key when this album was crafted. The instrumentation across this whole thing is flawless regardless. The passionate piano playing and layered drums and other sounds on top of all of that always adds a very strong emotional appeal to each one of the songs. I don't really have favorite. I could really say that each one of the songs is my favorite instrumentally because each one of them has a slightly different thing to offer. However, they're very similar in a lot of other ways. When the instrumentals build up for the entire song and then explode at the end, that is always super great, adds a very triumphant finish, and a lot of these songs have these very triumphant finishes. However, the very stripped back songs, the even more stripped back songs I should really say, are very beautiful in their subtlety. The instrumentals, while beautiful in their own right, add to the personality of the album most of all. Personality is something this album is soaked in. I heard from some people that you don't really need to know the other Fiona Apple albums in order to get the full enjoyment out of this one, so rather than diving into a full back catalog and wasting time that I could spend fully exploring this album, I just hopped right into it. And it is very rewarding because I feel like I can tell who Fiona is as an artist, as a person, in a lot of ways, even though this is the only release that I've heard from her. This album is so flawless in the execution of the personality aspects, and it comes off as a very human, very real album in that way. Much of this album focuses on feelings of being an outcast and being unaccepted by the people around you. Especially the first leg of this album anyways. Drum Set is a very genius track that executes this idea flawlessly, and one of the only ones that really resonates on it on the second half of the album. Drum Set is a song focused around a metaphor, a somewhat literal metaphor that is. Fiona's friend in the song had left a drum set at Fiona's house, and she had taken it to go play a gig somewhere. However, Fiona was feeling very lonely, very left out, and very unaccepted by her loved ones, so the absence of this drum set, the absence of this object that was connected to a person for her, made her feel further loneliness and was a visualization of those feelings. I think another great track to mention in this regard is the second track on here, this one titled Shameika. On here, Fiona talks about a really tough girl that she knew in school who said to Fiona that she had potential, and this really resonated with her and stuck with her. A lot of why this song is important is because the fact that it clearly demonstrates that much of this album isn't just resonating on very despondent feelings, but is showing how to deal with them and how she deals with them in particular as well. Heavy Balloon is another great example example of this very idea, in that at its core, this song is about being weighed down by depression, but the way that she interacts with it is so empowering. The vocals on here are so passionate and just make you feel more safe in these feelings, and I think that this is going to be a very powerful song for people who struggle with this issues. I know it hit me in a really special way when she started singing that chorus the first time. The second half of this album seems to focus mostly on a toxic, or at the worst cases, abusive relationship with a man. It's unclear whether or not the album wants us to think that this is the same guy, but that is kind of the impression that I get, is that she's seeing this guy from different angles and different time periods and different statuses of relationship throughout the course of these next few songs. And I say the second half of this album, it feels like I'm supposed to be directly taking it in that way, because the transition from the first song where this guy is mentioned, Rack of His, into the following track, Newspaper, is a fade out and then a very immersive and triumphant opening on Newspaper. It feels like you've ended one half, or really a separate album in some ways, and then started a new beginning, a new start, and this seems like it's a very intentional transition into this second portion, as much of the feelings of the first half aren't really resonated on again. This would be more seamless and more flawless of an execution if the song before Rack of His led into Rack of His in this way. However, we can't have everything, and my point does still stand in a lot of ways. I wish it was more like that, because I feel more confident in this idea. However, like I said, rather than rambling on further about the meanings of each one of these songs, I'm just going to shut up before I say something stupid and point out the fact that there is an interview that exists where Fiona breaks down the meaning and the interpretation of every single song on the record. This is always available at the bottom of the Genius lyrics page, her meaning behind every song, that is. And really, I think the best way to experience this album is to read along with the lyrics and then pause and read the explanation that she has given the song, and really just kind of soak in the meaning through that method. Although usually the messages portrayed on this album really need no outside interpretation. Although everything here is somewhat cryptic, buried in allegories, it really doesn't need a lot of explanation a lot of the time. The presentation of these ideas and the very nice metaphors that it's buried within really do let you interpret and experience the song without piecing out each and every little bit for you. Although these lyrics are super well crafted for the most part, and like I said, have very, very strong metaphors all throughout, there are moments on here where I just go, how the hell did that stay in the final cut of the album? And it's really unfortunate that moments like this are here, because otherwise this thing would be flawless. There's really only a few moments, but the way that they take me out of the immersion of the album really just kind of is a little bit painful. The two lines on screen right here and right here, yeah, these bug me. I find these really cringy, and I don't know if it's just me, but yeah, they drive me nuts. I'm sorry if that's the wrong way to look at it, but that's just, it's all I can feel. That's definitely a nitpick though, and something that's not even going to be a problem for the vast majority of people. It's just something that personally makes me cringe. It's not even something that I've heard other people mention really. However, I do have bigger issues that are less nitpicky. For example, most notably, the song Ladies. The refrain on here, that you guessed it, is the word ladies. Now, repetitive refrains on this album are not something that is only used here. It's something that's pretty common. However, I don't think any of the other ones were just one word being repetitively repeated. And something about her delivery just drives me up the wall. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it exactly. Anybody who feels me on this, and I feel like there is going to be some of you who do understand exactly what I'm getting at here, are going to know what I mean by finding it extremely aggravating with the tone that she delivers the word ladies in. It becomes more acceptable in the second half of this song. I think that her delivery over a more complicated instrumental as well becomes more acceptable, like I said, on the second half of this song. There are a lot of qualities of the song Ladies that I really like. It's just that that particular refrain really bothers me. The whole fruit bat section, yeah, I like that. That brought my enjoyment of the song way back up. Not that I hate this song in any way, but the opening cut, that outro really just makes her sound like an injured dolphin, and I'm not really quite sure what she was going for here, but it's really off-putting to have something like that right on the opening of the album. I understand the eccentric qualities that are very present here. Just look at the scream on Shameika right as the song starts to build up further, but the eccentric qualities can come across a little weird sometimes, this being the biggest example. While these moments do exist and they do just kind of fuck up my mood a little bit, I have to say just about everything else on here is just super solid. And I can't really praise it enough, and I don't really want to go into further detail because I think that it's an experience that everybody needs to have as they listen to the album. I get that this album isn't resonating the perfect way for every single person, but those people who do get it, like myself, I think, really do feel this album in a special way. It's, as I mentioned, complicated simplicity and flawless flaws that really bring this album together and make it a very special thing. Overall, I think a 9- out of 10 is pretty fair on Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Let me know what you thought of this album down in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Go ahead and start a conversation. Tell me why I'm wrong and it's actually a 10 out of 10. I need to know. Drop a like on the video if you did like what you saw today, and also hit the subscribe if you want to know when I upload more videos just like the one you watched today. But that's just about going to wrap it up for this one, and I will see you in the next video.